President Donald Trump is calling on former President Barack Obama to testify before Congress as it regards, quote, the biggest political crime and scandal in the history of the USA, end quote. Surely, though, President Trump can't be referring to the 2016 presidential election, as he was fully exonerated from all wrongdoing there.
The president has repeatedly claimed that your report found there was no obstruction and that it completely and totally exonerated him. But that is not what your report said, is it?
Correct. It is not what the report said.
So, President Trump lied. No big deal. Anyway, as President Trump doesn't specify what he would like President Obama to testify regarding, let me suggest that President Obama testifies concerning COVID-19. Since President Trump seems to believe that President Obama created COVID-19 to kill the white race, despite COVID-19 disproportionately affecting minorities. President Trump is very familiar with numbers, as he loves the number 6, and which is the number of times that he's filed for bankruptcy. President Trump loves the number 413 million, as that is the amount of money in real dollars that his father gave him, despite President Trump averring that his father only gave him a $1 million loan. And President Trump really loves the number 130,000, and which is the amount of hush money that he paid Stormy Daniels just a month before the 2016 presidential election. And so it's pretty strange that President Trump isn't familiar with the number 19, as in COVID-19, and which is so named because it was discovered in December of 2019. I concur, though, that the name COVID-19 really isn't menacing enough, seeing as how it's killed more people in 3 months under President Trump's watch than the Vietnam War did in the 18 years that the United States was involved there. And so I think that the name of COVID-19 should be changed to Super Mega Ultra Lethal Pandemic Edition, though I have no control over that. President Trump is fond of telling us, though, that it's President Obama's fault for not creating the test to diagnose COVID-19, despite the fact that President Obama left office on January 20th, 2017, and which was only 3 years before COVID-19 was even discovered.
You say broken test. It's a new virus, so how could the test be broken?
We had
Needed
a broken
new test.
Jim, we had broken tests. We had tests that were obsolete. We had tests that didn't take care of people.
So regardless of President Trump continually averring that no one could see this pandemic coming, President Obama must immediately testify before Congress to explain his lack of prescience on COVID-19, as everyone knows that black people are only good for acting, sports, and being psychic. Just look at Miss Cleo.
He is going to the one place where he knows that he can pick up a game with one of the most famous people in the world right now. President Obama, he's going to the Wizards.
What? The Washington Wizards?
All right, so she was wrong on where LeBron would play after leaving Cleveland. But so then COVID-19 is LeBron James's fault. Because if he would have only went to the Washington Wizards in 2010, then he surely would have helped President Obama come up with a diagnostic test for COVID-19 10 years before COVID-19 even existed. Everyone knows that President Trump thinks about nothing but sex. Wait, I'm sorry. What I meant to say was, everyone knows that President Trump thinks about nothing but the crimes of rape and molestation, seeing as how he's being accused by at least 25 ladies of incredible sexual misconduct.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything.
And thus, President Obama must expediently explain to Congress why the pandemic playbook that he was nice enough to create and that he was nice enough to leave for President Trump was 69 pages, and which of course is President Trump's absolute favorite number. As President Trump only looks at things with killer graphics, I'm sure that he was really upset as soon as he realized that the 69 pages President Obama left him was a policy manual, as opposed to something more President Trump's style, like the latest issue of Playboy. By his own admission, President Trump doesn't read much, as he prefers legal and policy documents to be distilled down to just a single page. So, in drafting the pandemic playbook, President Obama made a fatal error in failing to remember that President Trump is a very stable genius.
I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. Go ahead.
Thus, President Obama should have left President Trump a one-page pandemic playbook stating simply, pandemics equals very bad. So first, the Republican Party gives us former President George W. Bush, and who only looked at books for the fantastic pictures. And now they give us President Trump, who both Joe Scarborough and Michael Wolfevere is basically illiterate. Well, at least it finally makes sense why the Republican Party doesn't believe in evolution. Actually, while transitioning into office, President Trump's administration found President Obama's pandemic playbook to be pretty damn useful. They even did test response runs with it. And so I believe what happened is that President Trump was just so upset that President Obama failed to leave him naked photos of his beautiful wife Michelle in the Resolute desk, that when COVID-19 came to the United States, at that point, President Trump said, "Fuck this, I'm not using the pandemic playbook." That makes sense, as President Trump is used to seeing ladies naked, even when he's not supposed to.
I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show. Yes. And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, you know, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. You know, I'm inspecting. I want to make sure that
like
everything is good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? You know, they're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
Another thing that President Obama must immediately explain before Congress is why he failed to make sure that the United States' pandemic response mechanism was continued no matter what. President Obama began the Directorate for Global Health Security and Biodefense, and which was nicknamed the Pandemic Preparedness Office. And thus, President Obama is at fault for not placing the members of the Pandemic Preparedness Office in a sealed capsule at least 100 miles underground, with automatically firing machine guns at the front door, and flanked by a ton of snipers for miles and miles, so that President Trump couldn't shut down and close the Pandemic Preparedness Office in May of 2018. We all need to know why President Obama didn't simply cryogenically freeze Rear Admiral Timothy Ziemer, and who was the head of the Pandemic Preparedness Office and the official tasked to lead the United States in the event of a deadly pandemic. If President Obama would have done that, then President Trump couldn't have fired him in May of 2018 when he shut down the Pandemic Preparedness Office, as President Trump only got rid of people on The Apprentice when they were conscious.
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
It's not like President Trump could have simply placed Rear Admiral Zimmer on the shelf for a half hour to thaw and defrost. Also, President Obama must explain to Congress right fucking now why he didn't learn from President Trump's attorney illegally paying off Stormy Daniels, so that President Obama would have somehow continued to fund the PREDICT program, and which was a US government enterprise to train Chinese scientists in how to detect and treat coronaviruses, and which President Trump ended in September of 2019, and which was only 3 months before COVID-19 was discovered. Right, because spending $600 million of taxpayers' money to keep the taxpayers out of President Trump's private clubs was a much better policy decision by President Trump than preventing COVID-19. President Obama must also account for why he didn't smuggle his own money 3 years after leaving office to Eco Health Alliance, and which was a group that was assisting the lab in Wuhan, China, understand how bats transmit coronaviruses to human beings. As Donald Trump saw fit to cut their grant funding on April 24th, 2020, since he believes that China and President Obama somehow came up with COVID-19. Despite the fact that only 6 days later, on April 30th, 2020, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence told us all that COVID-19 wasn't created by man and wasn't genetically modified. President Trump says that the Obama administration left him with bare cupboards, meaning no supplies, in case of a pandemic.
Don't forget, the cupboard was bare. The other administration, the last administration, left us nothing. We didn't have ventilators. We didn't have medical equipment. We didn't have testing. The tests were broken. You saw that. We had broken tests. They left us nothing.
So if that's true, in the 3 years that President Trump was in office before COVID-19, why exactly did he not accrue such supplies?
What did you do when you became president to restock those cupboards that you say were bare?
Well, I'll be honest, I have a lot of things going on.
Wait a second. President Obama actually had, and left for President Trump, a strategic national stockpile, and which encompassed $8 billion worth of food, medical supplies, ventilators, and masks? I wonder why President Trump never mentions that. Well, he did play football growing up, so maybe he has CTE. Not a big deal at all. I mean, why should our president be competent and not be suffering from senility? Further, contrary to what the administration and Trump's asshole son-in-law Jared Kushner has to say, the strategic national stockpile, by law, is meant to supplement and resupply the states. Maybe when President Trump says that he had a lot of things going on, he was trying to buy the Buffalo Bills again and rip off banks and investors. Maybe when President Trump says that he had a lot of things going on, he means that his time was occupied calling white supremacists very fine people. Maybe when President Trump says that he had a lot of things going on, he was too busy cutting the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%. Or maybe, just maybe, Donald Trump was so busy because he was playing golf literally all of the fucking time. Despite saying that as president, he would never play golf again.
I'm not going to play much golf.
When you're in the White House, who the hell wants to play golf?
If I get elected president, I'm going to be in the White House a lot. I'm not leaving.
I'm going to be working for you. I'm not going to have time to go play golf.
But not to worry. It's only one of President Trump's 18,000 lives since he's been in office. And which really makes you think, why doesn't he have a larger nose to sniff out the truth? We really need to hear from President Obama regarding why exactly he has so much goddamn class. Probably the most pressing question for President Obama, though, is why exactly has he remained silent until just a few days ago, as President Trump continues to blame him nonstop for the U.S.'s lack of unified message, lack of supplies, and lack of answers regarding COVID-19. President Trump's daily lies regarding President Obama since COVID-19 began gives President Obama colorable actions against President Trump for libel and slander. And so if President Obama pursued these legal actions, then maybe, just maybe, President Trump would be held responsible for the more than 91,000 Americans who have perished due to COVID-19. The Trump administration estimates around 3,000 daily fatalities of Americans due to COVID-19 beginning on or around June 1st, 2020, and which is more American casualties per day than this country suffered from 9/11. Further, the Trump administration estimates 200,000 total American fatalities from COVID-19 by July 1st of 2020. And so many of the prior deaths from COVID-19 and most of the future fatalities of Americans from COVID-19 must squarely fall on the shoulders of President Trump and his administration. And there is no person better to do this under oath than former President Barack Hussein Obama.